Welcome to Ashley On, your one-stop podcast where we talk about health and wellness, spirituality, and all things new. Stick around as we delve deep into innovations to support a better world.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today we welcome Guy Needler back to the program. Guy's a frequent guest, and he's working on publishing his new book, Beyond the Origin, which should be out soon. And we're talking about the metaphysics behind our, global situation and how the mass ascension may have slowed, but there's an opportunity for us all to better detach from the material world, and in order to become more spiritual and to move us, collectively toward a more spiritually advanced civilization. We talk about this being an internal fight, with ourselves and within ourselves in order to really benefit society, rather than being an external fight against each other. And we also talk about how all religions are going to the same place. So regardless of your religious angle that you may have, ultimately moving toward a more spiritually advanced civilization is all in our best interests and our goal of achieving heaven on earth. So it's always great to talk to Guy Needler. Hope you enjoy the program. Thank you. Today's show is brought to you by Morrison Alley. Morrison Alley focuses on leadership and team development through experiential learning. Experiential learning is proven to be the much better way for people to learn. People have enhanced communication and trust. They have better engagement in their job and satisfaction with their job. They make faster decisions as a team. It really improves communication and morale, and ultimately just leads to superior learning outcomes. So it's really focused around igniting the potential of your leaders, helping them overcome challenges and drive lasting team change. MorrisonAlley.com is where you should check this out. We also provide marketing and strategy work for businesses to help grow, implement new technologies such as AI, to help streamline the business and improve efficiencies. Check it out, MorrisonAlley.com. Hello, Guy. Welcome back to the show. Always good to see you.
Well, thank you for asking me again, Ashley. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. And I'm hoping that we're going to share some new material with the listeners and the viewers today. It's always good to show some small aspect of the greater reality that helps towards the larger jigsaw puzzle that we have.
Absolutely. Me too. Let's just dive in with that. What is it that you would like to share with us today? Let's talk.
Well, it's interesting that one of the things that's been happening recently around the world is a complete dislocation of where we were supposed to be going from a metaphysical or spiritual perspective and a civilization perspective, compared to what we had about basically 15 years ago. And so I'm seeing that this is shall I say, almost a dystopian present rather than a potential dystopian future that you sometimes see in some of these science fiction films. And as a result of that, I see that, and I feel greatly that we have to go through this period because we've enjoyed a certain spiritual revolution, and that sort of died off as a function of the so-called mass ascension that we were supposed to have been having at the end of 2015 not happening because it was happening individually, not in a mass situation. And so those individuals who were part of that collective group sort of became thinner because people sort of dropped off the table because they felt betrayed or let down, or they thought that they were lied to by certain individuals who were sort of leaders in their metaphysical field at the time. So we started to drop down the frequencies, and as a result of that, we've gained a whole new materialistic perspective where we've become very, very selfish, very, very materialistic, very status orientated. You can see with the advent of the influencer, so to speak, and these influencers
So our
aren't particularly
progress,
high quality. Yeah,
so our progress has stopped, is what you're saying.
our progress has gone down. We haven't
Mm-hmm.
hit rock bottom. We haven't hit where we were several hundred years ago, for instance, in the medieval period. We haven't hit where we were in the war, the Second World War. we're just above where we were. We're sort of bouncing along a bottom that is becoming more and more obvious to people, actually. And this bouncing on the bottom frequently, and the associated behavior patterns across the world. And we can see that in Ukraine, we can see it in Palestine, for example. And I'm not talking about the individuals there. I'm talking about the governance, as it were, not the individuals themselves.
Sure. Right.
Is showing us that, we shouldn't behave in this way as a civilization. If we're going to be part of a greater civilization, the physical universe, where we're part of a bigger sort of collective of civilizations, we need to, we to change our thought processes quite significantly. But I can see that this is, again, is part of a dark era that we're going to go through, that's going to create a collective thought process, which will be sort of in the higher frequencies at first, but then will start to permeate down to the wider population, bit by bit, and then start to grow as triangulation between people starts to happen, where we start to think in a collective way that we'd be better off collectively governing ourselves rather than electing a particular government or leadership to do that, and that this collective thought process is at the individual stage, where we think, behave, and act in a way where we consider what we're going to do and how it affects others and how it affects ourselves and how it affects the environment as well. So we think collectively. It's not a hive mind, but it's an individual way of using our free will to make sure that free will is used appropriately and correctly. And then eventually we get to the point where we don't need any leadership, although we will have people who are, shall we say, specialists in their field that will allow us to progress from a technological perspective and from a sort of political perspective as well, where we start to realize that we're all one planet. Okay, we've got different skins and different cultures. It doesn't matter. They're just bodies that our souls use to experience, learn, and evolve in this particular location within the physical universe. And as a result of that, we'll start to help each other, help ourselves and each other as well. So collectively we'll benefit rather than individually will benefit. So the era of billionaires or trillionaires will start to die off, because again, at the end of the day, they're just a soul and a body who's experiencing a certain level of success within a certain level of application of their life plan. And so the objective of having, everybody having the same level of education, or education towards their specialism that they can benefit the collective with, looking after the environment, making sure that what we do doesn't pollute it, understanding weather systems better, then we can use those in terms of how we deal with crops and agriculture, and also how we, medication, how we look after each other from a medical perspective, and also the living standards. What's the point in somebody earning, having $430 billion if the person across the Atlantic or across the Pacific, is starving to death? It makes no makes no sense. That as a civilization, as a so-called advanced civilization, we allow those, the vast differences to happen. And so what I'm seeing here is that we're starting to go down this dark avenue that's going to lead us out into a realization that the way we are just isn't working.
Well, I interrupted you earlier. You were going to say something about the influencers being an example of that.
Well, they are. Well, they are.
Go back.
Well, the influencers are not specifically. It's not always the case, but a lot of them aren't particularly, shall I say, specialists in their field. They're just people who want somebody to follow them, and they do various different things, and then push it out there, and they manage to get some sort of advertisement or some sort of financial linking with their websites, and they get money from it, which is okay. But if you're going to influence somebody, influence them in the right way.
Right.
Not about, what sort of lipstick you can have, how you can use Botox to improve your appearance. It's about, why can't we educate people? If you're going to influence somebody, educate them properly. Teach them mathematics, teach them algebra, teach them carpentry, teach them, a life
something
skill
worthwhile
that they can use. something worthwhile. Yeah, that's for me. That's a good influence. Not trying to say that, a certain genre of individual is more, um, shall we say, status orientated than they are. For instance, people are saying that we've got this LB. I can't even say it.
Right,
all the
right,
different minorities we have now, but based upon gender. What does it matter? We're all a civilization. What our
right.
sexual orientation or dress sense is doesn't matter. As we are souls
Well,
in a
we're
body, and
all
we're using the body
one
to,
at the
to
end of the day.
navigate around. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you're going to
So
influence people,
what is
give them the right level of influence. Yeah, give them education, not your own preferences.
well, that's hopefully that's what we're trying to do here today, right? I mean, that's part of what and thank you for joining to try to spread that message. What is Source telling you for why the lack of progress? Why the step back, if you will? Is it a two steps forward, one step back kind of scenario, or what's going on?
Well, what I've observed over the years I've been doing this, and the energies I've been picking up, is that we do have a medium, a mean, where we're going up the frequencies, and we are experiencing, ascension, personalized ascension, and evolutionary content as associated with it. It's not that obvious at times. Clearly, it's not that obvious. But in essence, we are generally going up. But what we go through on this medium line, we go through this sawtooth profile, where we go up for a period of time, and maybe we go down for a period of time, or maybe we stay at a certain level for a period of time, then go up again, or we stay up at a certain level, then come down again. And what I've noticed is this sawtooth profile isn't specifically the logical sawtooth profile. We can go through what we call a sawtooth profile, then go through a big tooth, and then down a bit and up a bit, and then down a big tooth. So it's almost like we have the difference between a big old pit saw that we used to have to saw wood in half with a great big teeth and little teeth on top of it, versus the standard wood saw, in terms of illustrating how we can go up and down. And what we're doing now is we've coming down one of these big teeth, basically. And it's not a case of coming down a big tooth and hitting the mean and then go back up again, and going through the normal sort of sawtooth profile. We've come from a big top of a big tooth down to the bottom of a big tooth as well, and out the other side. So it's a big change we're experiencing, and it's leading to lower frequency thoughts, behaviors, and actions, which results in significant levels of, attraction or addiction to material things around us, which includes status, not just uh, financial things or material wealth, ownership things. It's about who and what we are and how we want people to relate to us. It's the whole gamut of physical attractions and addictions. So it's including things like being addicted to cyberspace, being addicted to, um, wearing certain clothes, wearing certain brands, being seen with certain people, having a certain job, having different types of cars, or having more than one car, for example, or
Right.
two or three houses. It's about everything, how we relate to others, whether we deride them or whether we praise them all the time, whether we consider them as equals or whether we consider them to be below us or above us. The whole thing is associated with the physical universe and the level of frequency that we're at within that physical universe right now.
So we're still spirits living in a material world.
To quote the police, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got that reference. Yes. Uh, it, well, what do we do? What practical advice? I mean, can our listeners? I mean, this is a show of hope, right? So how can we have hope and give energy to the positive in this discussion? And what guidance can you help us with?
Detach. Ironically enough, I saw somebody sent me a link to an Eckhart Tolle, lecture online about being detached, and that led to me doing a couple of short lectures on my WorldSat saying. One will come out, in May, and one will come out in June, about detachment and how it can remove things like anxiety or anticipation or depression or lack of confidence. But the thing is about detachment is it's not about renouncing our responsibilities. It's about being responsible, really, but in the right way. We detach from the things that would affect us emotionally, stab us in the heart, for example, and we attach ourselves to the things that give us joy, but aren't detrimental or create the karmic link between us and us and the physical universe. So from that perspective, we can be a good example to others, and we can, if people see us being joyful and happy and in our own environment, in our own skin, we can share how we've achieved this level of happiness with them. So those people who are tuned in to this recording, either audio based or video based, will not be at the same level as the average population. They will have maintained a certain level of frequency that's keeping them above the mean, and
Right.
they will be shaking their heads in dismay as to what's happening in the world right now. But they will think maybe I can't do anything because I'm one person. Actually, one person makes a big difference, and that is to not get drawn into the gossip, not get drawn into the negative aspects, not get drawn into being taken advantage of, or not getting your reward, not getting drawn into anything which is competitive or status orientated within the world environment, and continue to be of service when requested or when required in a way that's not creating dependency, and just be the good example. Just continue to be the good example. Do good things, say good things, don't talk about people. Offer help, meditate, stay connected, stay high frequency, and your energies will help those around you, and the energies will help the environment around you as well. So as people enter into your sphere of existence, whether it's where you work or where you live, whether you're going to the supermarket to buy food, they will feel uplifted, and that's what we should be doing: is maintaining our frequencies and help others maintain their frequencies in whichever way we can. We don't need to go seeking it, because that can be detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
People can think we're sort of messing with their lives or interfering with their lives, for example. What we need to do is just be there and do the right thing, and continuously do the right thing. Yeah. If you see rubbish on the sidewalk, if you got the chance to pick it up and put it in the bin, do so. You might be picking up one Coke can, or one Sprite can, or one cigarette packet, and put it in the bin. People will see you doing that, and they may
Mm-hmm.
not do it themselves straight away, but later they may feel the urge to do it themselves. And eventually we start to get lots of people just picking up other people's rubbish. And then eventually people will exist in an environment where there's no rubbish on the floor, and they'll think, well, maybe I should put this in the bin rather than the sidewalk. And so these things do create a domino effect, or a
So
snowball effect.
as I like to say, I wrote a Kindle book called Fast Waves. It was kind of a children's book, but the point being, um, when you get into a pool, if there's people in there, even if they're making slow waves, low vibrational being the analogy, right? Even if one person gets in that pool and starts making fast waves of positivity, it being the analogy, then the fast waves dominate over the low waves. And so what I'm hearing you
Mm.
say is take every moment you can to to be the fast wave, and trust that is going to ripple its way through the universe and through other people to create the positive change that we're all, I think everybody at least that's listening to this program or watching this program
Mm.
is desiring. Is that accurate?
That's a good way to explain it. Another way to explain it is, even in the darkest room, if there's a pinhead of light,
Hmm.
then that room isn't totally dark.
Yeah, I like that.
And that pinpoint of light is the potential to change, because it's an irritation, it's an aberration to the dark. It's not homogeneous. And it's the same with your waves. You're creating a wave upon a wave upon a wave. And that's the same thing.
So I guess is it the media? Is that why these low vibration we're heading down this trend? Is because people are paying attention and watching and listening and giving energy to the wrong things? I mean, without passing judgment on them, but I mean, it's the low vibrational things is just dominating the attention. Is that kind of why we're
Yeah,
experiencing this?
yeah. There's two things. One is the speed at which social media has been introduced, and of all different types and sources, and how it's being used. That creates a snowball effect, a rapid snowball effect. In fact, it's almost you know a cliff edge effect, basically.
Mhm.
And and the devices that allow us to interact in an instantaneous way through social media are being used by immature minds, those minds that haven't grown up yet, and they're being influenced by individuals who may be immature, but they may be warped and twisted as well, or they may be mature, but they may be childlike. And so that's one of the things that's sort of happening, is that we're allowing various different mediums that allow us to have instant communication, which, by the way, things like mobile telephones and all these different things, these instantaneous communication methods are only a substitute for us being able to communicate telepathically, and will detract us from doing the work that allows us to raise our frequencies and have the higher functions of, intuition, clairsentience, clairaudience, telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation. They're only physical substitutes and they're extremely limited. So if we were to only allow individuals of a certain age and maturity profile and psychological profile, I feel as well, to be able to use these things in a totally free way that they are right now, then we would not be in the situation we are currently, in the very materialistic world. Because I mean, I can remember a long time ago, we had a saying in the UK, we've got to keep up with the Joneses, which is a way of saying you've got to somebody down the road in your suburb, your high street, is more wealthy than you are. And to keep up appearances, you've got to sort of drive around in the same level of car that they've got, have the same flowers in the flower bed, have good quality clothes, etc. But it takes a lot of effort to do that. Why not be happy with where you are, and not have the stress associated with it? And these sort of influences on the internet create a lot of stress within young minds, because they think they need to be the same as these people, and more often than not they can't be, and that creates confusion, anxiety, and ultimately depression, and of course lack of confidence. And so we start to go through the route of, as you can see now, the world is seeing an epidemic in depression within young people, because they're exposed to things that they can't handle yet, because they haven't had the experience, and more importantly, they haven't had the teachers with the experience to help them navigate through these choppy waters.
Yeah, I think that's something definitely I think everybody can relate to. There's someone in all of our lives, or maybe multiple people in all of our lives, who are struggling with depression and or looking back, and not being able to, move forward with gratitude and confidence. And like you said earlier, we have to live it ourselves and trust that that vibration is going to be observed and catch on. I wonder if there's anything else you can share, because sometimes it's difficult to watch those we love struggle in this scenario, right? And maybe not as quickly get to the example that we're living for them, because they're so overwhelmed with the depression or the regret, or
Mm,
the lack of hope.
mm. Well, the underlying aspect is metaphysical. The thing that creates where we are is that we need to be seen to be with the right people, doing the right things, interacting with the right media, interacting and getting the right level of airtime. And and that's because inherently we are in communion. When we're out of the body, we're in communion with our true energetic self, our higher self, which is in communion with source, or that which the higher self has been individualized from us as a volume of sentience. So we're always in communion in some way, shape, or form, whether it's some form of compartmentalized communion within the volume of sentience that is our higher self or true energetic self. The Hindus call the Godhead, or the Oversoul, or we are in some form of detached communion where we're still in communion with, or still linked with our true energetic self, our higher self, but we're not specifically within the same volume of sentience. But nevertheless, because of our higher frequency, we're in contact with everything and every entity instantaneously. And so we have this desire to be part of something all the time when we're here, because we're in these lower frequencies, even in the higher frequencies of this particular universe, we are still disconnected in some way from our higher selves. We are still working with a significantly reduced communicative bandwidth. That means that we're almost isolated from a connectivity perspective with our true energetic self. And that's why we start to become body associated, and we start to lose the memory point of who what we really are, and start to become governed by the development of a personality that's associated with this incarnation that we call the ego. And so if we can recognize this and recognize that we need to maintain a higher frequency and help these people by saying, actually, the way to being happy isn't about being part of something from a material perspective, like being in a gang or a group, or being seen on television, or being an influencer, or being one of an influencer's followers. You know, when you see these these pop artists, for example, or rock groups, and they've got lots of devotees and followers. If we can move away from that level of connectivity that need to be in that sort of group, but try to better our frequencies by meditation and connecting to the greater reality, or those entities that are in and around our true energetic selves, or part of our true energetic selves, or a part of the individualization of sentience from other true energetic or higher selves, then we would achieve a different level of communion, not just communion in the physical sense, or the psychological sense, but communion in the holistic sense. And so teaching, young minds that actually this is better than what you're experiencing now, because there is no detrimental influence other than the way to understand what you really are, and that gives you unbelievable amounts of joy and confidence, and removes all forms of anxiety and depression. But first, you've got to detach from these addictions, and we have to do it in a way that is not pressurizing them, because they'll reject that, but letting them think it's their decision based upon seeing enough positive evidence as a result of it.
Yeah, I one of the things that I wanted to, I think it's a nice segue here. I've had a couple of people on recent guests on the podcast that we've talked about the masculine versus feminine dimensions of ourselves and society, how we've been ruled really by the masculine forces over the last several centuries, and that really we're out of balance in that regard. And I wonder what your opinion is of that, and what your thoughts to kind of build on that concept of getting more toward a balanced masculine and feminine existence. And could that be part of what we're seeing here is we were moving more toward a feminine, influence in our society, and more towards balance. And now we've kind of stepped away from that and gone more into the masculine. I just wonder if that resonates with you, or what your thoughts are on that concept.
Although history might say, well, the recent history, which is what we know about, might tell us otherwise, there has been a number of different civilizations that have come to prominence and fallen that have been feminine orientated, the feminine side of the the human dichotomy has been the leadership side. I mean, right now it's the male side, and then we're getting a sort of a catch-up effect where we're very quickly becoming very, very woke, and we're promoting the female side, which I've got no problem at all with that at all. But we're in overcompensation mode, and that creates a disturbance. There needs to be a balanced way of doing it, and one of the overcompensations is that we are creating this condition where there's lots of shades of grey in between what is specifically male, what's specifically female, and clearly there are souls who incarnate into a body that is male, and they expected it to be female, or they've had lots and lots and lots of incarnations in the female form, and they can't quite shake the female mentality in their soul when they come into a male body, and vice versa for the male to the female. So you start to get the reasons why we have people who are drawn towards the male partnership side when they're male, and people who are drawn towards the female partnership side when they're female. And then you get people who transition from one sex to another sex, either mentally, psychologically, or therefore psychologically, or physically, and vice versa. And you've got bits in the middle with different associations with, people associate themselves with animals now, or something else. I think all these things are fine, but they're a distraction from the duality that is here. There's an argument there within the British Parliament now, where we're saying that a woman is a biological woman. A transgender person who's had the operation is a biological woman. It's what you're born with that counts as being whether you're male or female, and that's it. It's very obvious, very, very sort of black and white. What you do later is up to you. But there needs to be recognition of what is the mainstream understanding, and everything else is a choice after that. So we need to recognize choice, but also we need to recognize that we can overcompensate and create a disturbance that creates resentment. And that's what we don't want to do. The ideology is that we are totally equal, whether we're male, female, whether we're homosexual male, lesbian female, whether we've transitioned from male to female or female to male, or whether it's something in the middle. It doesn't matter. It's what we do that counts. Somebody can talk about doing something for all their life, but it's the action that counts. And if we can see that, again, we're just souls in a human body, it can be neuter, it can be eunuch, it can be like a born that doesn't have sex associated with it at all, which is what you see some of the civilizations in the other parts of the galaxy are like. That we will be able to recognize that the balance is accepting the neutral, and that's the way forwards. If you're left of the neutral, doesn't matter. If you're right of the neutral, doesn't matter. Everything is equal, and that's the most important bit. Everything should be equalized, and I'll guess that if we take my previous statement that there's been plenty of civilizations that have been governed by the female side, and that's flipped over to the side of the next civilization, it's governed by the male side, and then we flip back again. If you think about that, we are the seventh of the succession of highly civilized, so to speak, incarnate human vehicles, then we should be now embracing the duality and creating a lack of duality, and that everything is equal. And that in itself creates a dynamic where we start to move away from the status side or the materialistic side, and people will start to be treated with total equality in all ways. That's again a part of this collectivism function that we will eventually move down towards, should we move outside of our current dystopian present.
So let's explore that a little bit further, just that we are the seventh generation. Let's share with our listeners, your perspective on that and what you've learned about the six other preceding, I don't know if generation is even the right word for it.
Well, in my understanding, most of this is in the first book of the History of God, by the way, but basically what's happened is that we were given the opportunity to experience individualized free will at a very high frequency. And so we, as souls, were allowed to move in and out of bodies at will. So we wouldn't sort of move into a body and use it and then demise it and then we move out again. We would move in and out of bodies. And that meant that I could experience what you've experienced and you could experience what I've experienced and I could experience what Barack Obama's experienced. I could experience what Donald Trump's experienced. I could experience what King Charles experiencing. All these different things, but it's a much higher level. And then that got corrupted in some way because there was a number of different things that were being, so we say, experienced that were the energies of such were being maintained within the body. So the next soul that came in accepted those energies as well. And then when that soul moved out, that dysfunction, as it were, was passed on to the next body. So we started to get a catastrophic effect. And as a result of that, we've gone through a number of different scenarios where the bodies have gradually reduced in frequency over the time, resulting in a number of different rises and falls in civilization. We talk about the Atlantean period. That was one of them. That was the one preceding this one. Now we've got the Egyptians, we've got the Byzantine period, we've got a mixture of the Romo-Greco period, we've got philosophy and mathematics stroke technologically advanced thinking process and application process molding together. That could have been a really good springboard to work from, but that got corrupted as well. And so we didn't, although it wasn't specifically a big civilization that's worldwide, like we are now, but not connected, it could have been much better. So it come down the frequencies, and various different body types have been imported or survived the drop in frequencies as a result of that. So the different colors in genomes and body types we've got as a human being aren't specifically a function of evolution or Darwinian evolution. Some of them are. There are little bits in the middle where the body types have actually adapted to a lower frequency and become what they are. But the others that are dramatically different have been imported from different locations within the physical universe that have got humanoid body types that are of the right level of frequency that we can repopulate the planet with, because there was too many lost, so to speak. So in essence, we've got civilizations that we know about. We know about the Sumerians, which are also a very good civilization, not part of the seven, but they were a bit in between. Same with the Mayans, for example. They were also a bit in the middle. And most of these have either fallen totally, but some parts of them have also maintained their frequency and gone into the next level of frequency, which is what we call the fourth frequency or the lower astral levels. So they're still civilization on Earth. It's just that we don't see them or perceive them because our frequencies are lower than theirs. And so it's like trying to see a gas, a very rare gas, by the way. So we don't see them. But the civilizations, without giving them names, Sumeria was one that was before or around the Atlantean period as well, just before it. Because sometimes there can be a very quick transition from one civilization to the other. And that civilization doesn't necessarily need to be technologically advanced to be an advanced civilization. This is the hiccup we have, the banana skin, the pothole that we go down, is we think that an advanced civilization is one that is technologically advanced. It's not. It's how they interact with each other, how they connect with the earth, the environment, and how they remain connected with their higher selves and the rest of those entities that are not incarnate or are incarnate, but at a higher frequency within the physical universe or the locale within this particular galaxy. So a higher civilization doesn't necessarily leave anything behind. They can disintegrate, so to speak, but what they've left behind is nothing. We've got plenty of examples of coherent civilization around the world with the pyramids. Earlier this year, I went to Mexico. We went around a lot of different pyramids around there. Chichen Itza is one of them, but we went to a lot of others as well. And you can see when you start to look at the ratios and the dimensions of these things, although they're not quite pyramids, the dimensions and the ratios the associated ratios are the same around the world. Whether you go to see those that are under the seas in the Sea of Japan, whether you see them in Egypt, whether you see them in Cambodia, they're all the same. So there was a definite, interactive, homogeneous worldwide civilization that had its own culture associated with it. But again, if all they leave is solid state technology, such as rocks glued together with water, then we don't see what they really were as a civilization. We only try to work it out by trying to put our own technology as a basis for working out their technology. And their technology might just have been a case of providing a center point for collective meditation. And that's it.
So spiritual advancement versus technological advancement is a key point.
Absolutely. Now, sometimes technological advancement leads to the possibility of spiritual advancement, because it, as we said in the 70s and 80s, we're going to have all these computers governing everything. We're going to have lots of free time to be able to do whatever we want to, because the machines are going to do all the manufacturing. It didn't actually work out that way, but
Right.
in fact, it became more complicated. But the point is that spiritually advanced civilizations will always be light years away from a technologically advanced civilization, because they don't need to have the technology to be able to do what the technology does.
Right.
And that's
So
the stepping stone. Okay.
when we think about, I mean, we just, we just came off of the Easter holiday, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and the brings a lot of hope for a lot of people. And the second coming of Christ is often talked about, right? And a lot of folks talk about that being really a different spirituality, the Christ consciousness being the second coming. Are we talking about that? Is that part of the ascension process, or what we've taken a step back from, or what? Help clarify some of my question around that.
Well, to be christened, or christened was to be purified, and the legend states that John the Baptist purified Christ before he became the minister of his teachings, basically. So to be christened is to be purified. If you're purified, you're not addicted to anything physical. You're in the physical, but you're not of the physical. And so, say the second coming of Christ, when the first coming of Christ was just simply somebody who was helping us to see ourselves, helping us to see ourselves, giving us methods. Sometimes it was in stories, because the educational level of the individuals at the time, and the language base of the individuals at the time was so low they wouldn't be able to understand higher concepts. But through stories, they could understand these things, albeit in a metaphoric way. But the whole point of you being christened is that you're purified, and therefore you're not anchored here, and therefore your frequency is higher, and therefore your ability to connect with other entities, your true energetic self, and other aspects of your true energetic self whilst you incarnate is there. So the second coming is, as you alluded to, an internal thing. It's our ability to connect to other entities, and of course ourselves, our higher selves, whilst incarnate, and even connect with source whilst incarnate. And in some rare instances, that which is beyond source whilst incarnate. And so it's all about an ascension process. This is within. And it's not an easy process, even for those who are, shall we say, educated or shown the right way from birth, have difficulty in continuing this process. And we have this legend, or this story about Jesus going into the desert and having 40 days and 40 nights arguing with the devil, who was giving him the opportunity to, you could be a rich person, you could manifest wealth, you can govern lands, you can do this. It wasn't with the devil, it was with himself. It was his ego, because he knew that the skills he had been taught in that period where he disappeared, which was meditation and connection, could be used for personal aggrandizement. But he eventually chose the right path where he was going to show people how to achieve the same as him. And he achieved that in a number of different individuals. You know, the 12 couples of disciples, the 12 male and the 12 female. Of course, very male orientated society doesn't recognize females as being equals, so that they get left out of the picture. So that's why we've only got 12 male disciples, but there's 12 female disciples. They were, you know, sometimes they're married to the male disciple. So we need to understand that ascension or liberation or self-awareness is something that we have to work in ourselves and generate within ourselves. And that creates self-awareness or self-realization or wakefulness. And that's what the second coming is all about. The vast majority of the population of the earth won't achieve that. Some will, small number will, but that small number makes a massive difference.
Well, it's almost like when I hear you say that, what I think about is it, to deny that and to think more of it's a physical second coming is a way to avoid the accountability of yourself and to wait on something happening materialistic to appear, i.e., another person, another physical being of Christ, when it's far much more difficult to evolve within and to become what Jesus said we could all be.
Well, it wasn't just Jesus, it was Muhammad, it was the Buddha, and you know, and countless other individuals that we've not mentioned, including the so-called ascended masters around the world. I mean, every continent had a number of individuals doing a similar thing, and some of them recorded in history and some of them haven't. And so we have to look at the bigger picture of all of this, is that there's lots of different ways to achieve these things, to achieve ascension, to achieve connectivity. Some of it is a lifestyle, some of it's meditation, some of it is understanding balance in the world, some of it is acceptance that everything is equal. And depending upon the teacher, the primary teacher, the first person who is identifying this as a way forwards, and their understanding depends on how fast the student might ascend to that level. But at the end of the day, they all get there. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's a bit slower. Doesn't matter, because each of those different ways creates the possibility within the individual. What we have to do is detach from the human vagary associated with it, because some of these different religions are being used to control medium. And I can understand that, because, you know, when we're a couple of thousand years in the past or 1,000 years in the past, we're in a really low frequency state. And the only way to ascend or to create self-awareness was to be absolutely rigidly following the rules. You know, there was no there was no fast track. It was very, very, very hard work and a lifetime's work. And a moment of realization, probably a day or so or an hour or so before you leave the incarnation. So we have to respect everything as being a potential way forward and allow it to coalesce into one toolkit for ascension, rather than say my way is better than yours, or your way is dysfunctional, or your way is blasphemy. It's complete nonsense. We are all souls that are individualized from our higher selves, which in turn was individualized volume of sentience from the source. We're all the source. So why do we fight each other?
Yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate your perspective on the appreciation of these rigorous religious viewpoints and why they were established. I think sometimes they get in, you know, they get in the way. Like I brought up the point about accountability. It's very easy just to wait, you know, and say, well, you know, I don't have to really work on myself because Jesus is going to return and save all of this, right? And that's you know, I think a result of the control mechanisms that have been put into place to avoid that accountability of us moving forward. And so I can appreciate your positivity around that.
Yeah. I mean, I know that one of the religions says you have to fight for your religion. You have to fight for your, your leader. It's not fighting outside. It's fighting within.
Hmm.
It's fighting to move beyond the vagaries of the ego, the attachment and the addictions to low frequency existence, such as status and material wealth, and one-upmanship. It's an internal fight, not an external fight. And this is another link into, the second coming, because every religion on the planet has the capability of creating awareness within the self and the connectivity to source, whether it's yoga or whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Judaism. They've all got the capacity. It's just humans get in the way.
No, it's very well said. I really appreciate that. I think you've brought it full circle back to your point of detachment, so that we can actually become more spiritually oriented, regardless of what the religious label may or may not be. Um, yeah, I think that's I just wonder if there's we're getting, near the end of our time. What other insights might you offer, and as we think about wrapping up this conversation and around detachment and any new work that you may be doing?
Well, very quickly, just to lead into the last bit. Think of your religion as a mode of public transport, and you're all going to the same city. How you get the fact that your public transport might be a bus or a train or an aeroplane or a car or a motorbike or a push bike or hitchhiking is immaterial. That's the route you've taken. They all get to the same place. It's just the vehicle is slightly different. That's it. Not one vehicle is better than the other. Some of them give you a depth of understanding. Some of them give you the speed of the understanding. Some of them give you a level of understanding across everything. And some of them give you specialized understanding. Everything counts because everything is absorbed by our higher selves, which is absorbed by source. So everything we experience and do is part of our evolutionary process and part of our ability to evolve. So don't worry about whether you're going on a push bike, whether somebody else is going in an aeroplane. It doesn't matter. Your journey is just as important as theirs, and theirs is just as important as yours. That's the most important thing.
It's wonderful.
Leading on to other things, the book that's just about to be published, called Beyond the Origin, which is I've classified as an event space odyssey, which is a rather presumptuous subtitle, is really showing that we can and we have the capacity to, should we give ourselves the opportunity, understand or link in not with the present, but with the present. And this book was very hard work, because it was me communicating with the origin of the source, of the sources, the larger volume of sentience that occupies structured space, and moving through a function of structured space, which is called event space, to experience what we in our linear existence would call the future. It's just another part of the overall nowness. And so my initial connectivity with it a long time ago was just one point. It's like one exposure on a reel of cinema film. The ability to rise up the frequencies allows us to see more of these exposures concurrently. So we start to see a moving picture. If it was a cinema film, we have going past our eyes at 60 frames a second, 60 hertz. We're increasing frequency. If we increase our frequency substantially, we can absorb all of the information, all of the slides, all the images on the whole of that cinema film in one go. So we've got the whole can of cinema film we can see in one go. And that's what event space allows us to do. Not just pick on, see one event per second. We can see all events concurrently. And so rather than being limited to communicating with the origin in this version of it, I've been able to communicate with it in other versions of it and see its own sort of future, so to speak, from our perspective, in our linear way, being able to dip into a particular exposure on the can of film rather than the start and have to go from the start to the end slowly doing this. We can just dip into it and everything else. So it was really profound being able to understand the structure of structured space, and that structured space is simply an aberration in unstructured space or nothingness. And it's not even perceivable as a volume or sphere of structured space within non-structured space. It's an aberration, and that's this aberration doesn't allow anything to exist beyond it, except when that which is not structured can be classified as structured in a very abstract way, and therefore allowing, from our perspective, a linear perspective, a future that's so far away that there's no way we could ever understand it, because right now the origin is occupying only the first few levels of structure within the first of 12 levels of structure. There's 12 levels of structure within each 12 levels of structure. It's still in the first level, but eventually it goes beyond that and occupies all of it, and then finds a way to go outside of it. And we all do it as the origin, not as individualized units. We go through various different evolutionary stages to get there, evolutionary stages to get there, or cycles to get there. But eventually we all are back in as the origin, and the origin then moves out of structured space and starts to create other pockets of structured space, which isn't a limitation, because structured space is a limitation by default, but it's creating the potential for infinite structured space within that which is unstructured space. And that sounds a bit scientific and a bit sort of over one's head and over my head as well.
I wonder what
it just shows that it's infinite. There is pure infinity, but it's beyond our current level.
I wonder what your thought is, because what comes to mind when you to listen to you and to try to wrap my mind around what you're saying. There was a Nikolai Tesla quote. I'm not exactly sure what he was doing or what experiments he was doing, but I recall him saying that he could see the past, present, and future all at the same time. And I wonder if that's similar to what you're talking about. He reached a certain vibration, like your hertz and frame by frame example. I mean, is that what he was saying? And
basically, yes, he was seeing things holistically. He was connected to his higher self, which is beyond physicality, it's beyond linearity, and therefore, from our perspective here, everything that we classify as being past, present, and future happens in the now, or has happened, or is happening, or will happen, or should happen, or could happen, or possibly might happen, but has happened. so he was very connected, and so was Edison as well. Edison was I mean, there was a bit of a battle between Edison and Tesla, but they were both connected. But Tesla didn't have the earthly link to be able to be a good marketeer. He was more interested in what he was discovering and trying to show it to the rest of the world, rather than trying to make a business out of it, which is what Edison did.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting guy. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and best of luck. You said it's called Beyond the Origin. Is that the new book?
Yeah, the new book it's in pre-order now. It's pre-order from my publisher, Ozark Mountain Publishing, and it's on pre-order from Amazon. Now, Amazon say it's available in October onwards. That's a placeholder. They always do that. So it'll be available maybe in the next sort of 4 to 5 weeks. And just very quickly before we finished, we've now published the last and the 5th World Satsanga book, which is the transcriptions edited and compiled by Ula Sarmiento, who transcribed them from the very start. So we've worked together, but she's done a lot of work, an awful lot of work. So I'll give her lots of praise for this, because it's fantastic. But all the lectures, some of the choice meditations as well, we've taken together along with questions and answers that explains all of the things we discussed over the last, since 2012, basically. So they're available on Amazon as well, and they've just gone audio. So they've been available as paperbacks, as Kindles, and now they've just got audio. So you can listen to the world saying in your car on the way to work. How's that? How exciting is that?
That's great.
But,
Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful and good news.
yeah.
Well, thank you again. If you want to hang on for a second, I'd like to just chat with you as we wrap up. But Guy Needler, thank you for joining the show. It's always great to see you.
Thank you for letting me be on your show. Thank you for letting me share, and thank you for letting me talk too much. It's
Not at
always
all.
an honor, but I do appreciate that I can talk. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Today's show is brought to you by Morrison Alley. Morrison Alley focuses on leadership and team development through experiential learning. Experiential learning is proven to be a much better way for people to learn. People have enhanced communication and trust. They have better engagement in their job and satisfaction with their job. They make faster decisions as a team. It really improves communication and morale, and ultimately just leads to superior learning outcomes. So it's really focused around igniting the potential of your leaders, helping them overcome challenges and drive lasting team change. MorrisonAlley.com is where you should check this out. We also provide marketing and strategy work for businesses to help grow, implement new technologies such as AI to help streamline the business and improve efficiencies. Check it out, MorrisonAlley.com.
Thanks for listening to Ashley on Nothing But the Truth for a Better You and Me.